So what we're going to be doing in this class is we're going to be going through the book 2 in the Hebrew from the very beginning series. Okay, so we're going to start with lesson 1 in book 2, and hopefully during the course of this whole class we will work through the whole book. So yeah, and we'll try to cover one lesson every week. So if you have your book, you can open it up to lesson 1. If you don't have a book, that's okay. I'll be putting everything up here on the screen. As you can see, I've already got a lot of the words up here. So you can just take notes as we go with what's on the screen. Okay, so lesson 1 basically is going to cover past tense of Pa'al Kal. Okay, so Pa'al is right, it's a binyan, right? And then Kal is like a subgroup within the binyan of Pa'al. Binyan is the different types of verbs, right? The verb groups. Okay, and we've got La'uf, so that's the first one up here. La'uf. La'uf just means to fly, but this is not like an airplane or whatever. If you remember from book 1, we have the word latus, which is like how you would say to fly with either an airplane or a helicopter or something. So la'uf is to fly, and this would be the way a bird flies. So if a bird is flying, you would use this verb. Okay, so I'll just put bird in parentheses here. Okay, the next word we have here is lamut, and that means to die. And then we have lazuz. Lazuz means to move. Okay, and this is move as in movement, so something just moving from one place to another, but it is not to move in the sense of like moving from one house to another. Right? If you're changing your residence, it's not used that way, okay? It's only to move in the sense of, right, he moved just now, I saw him move, that type of thing. So these are all Pa'al Kal verbs. So when we go to the present tense, it's going to work just like the verbs lashir or lagur, larutz, right? Latus, you're already familiar with those ones. And it's going to conjugate in exactly the same way as those ones. So basically, the present tense forms are all going to have the a vowel, right? And you're just taking your 2 root letters minus that middle vav, right? So with la'uf, the present tense is going to be af, right? Afa, afim, afot, as you would assume. And then also with lazuz, it's going to be the same thing. You're taking your zayin, zayin, zaz, right? Zaza, zazim, and zazot. Okay, that will be the present tense forms of those. And then with lamut, so this one is unusual. It's one of the only, if not the only, Pa'al Kal verb where the vowel for the present tense is e instead of a. Okay, so I'm going to put this on here just so we don't miss it. And the vowel. So this is met. So met, meta, metim, metot. Otherwise, Pa'al Kal, you're always using that a vowel, right? Zaz, af. This one is unusual. So met. Who met? He's dying or he's dead. Okay, and that is how you would say it. This verb is used. It could be used for anything. Also, like even a plant or whatever. Something died, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and run over the rest of the word list, and then we'll start getting into a little bit with the past tense of the Pa'al Kal verbs. Okay? So we also have a noun here, tzipor, and this means bird. Tzipor is a bird. You remember in Exodus, the story of Moshe, his wife's name is Tzipora. So her name just means a bird. So tzipor is a bird. Something interesting with this word tzipor is that it's usually feminine, okay? So if you said tziporim, which is the plural form, and you said the birds are flying, you would say hatziporim afot. Okay, hatziporim afot, even Tzipor doesn't necessarily sound like it would be a feminine word, but it is a little bit unusual there. Okay, then we have the word avar here, which basically just means past in both senses of that word. So like past as in the past tense, and also past as in somebody passed by. It would mean that as well. So this is commonly used in sentences where we're using past tense verbs. So for instance, if I said last week, okay, so I sang last week, I would say sharti beshavua, right? Shavua is the word for week. Beshavua she'avar, so that passed, the week that passed. So that's how you say last week, last year, last month, any of those type of things. Shavua she'avar. So avar is the past tense, so we just got two ah vowels there. Avar. Tzipor, so the vowel here is O, E-O, tzipor. So there's an example sentence with that word. Sharti sham ba'avar. So I sang there, ba'avar, in the past. I sang there in the past. Beshavua she'avar, so that's what I said, last week, right? Beshavua she'avar, during the week that passed. And then the word will change to the feminine form, right, when it's used with shana. Shana is feminine. So beshana she'avra. So when you say last year, it's shana she'avra. Last week is shavua she'avar. This is last week, and this is last year. Okay, and then we have lifnei. Lifnei just means before. Could also mean used like in front of. Okay. Lifnei. And it comes from the word panim. I don't know if any of you would be familiar with that, but panim is the word for face. Panim. So literally this is to the face of, right? So it's similar to the concept like with banim. Banim means sons. But when we say the children of Israel, you say b'nei Yisrael, right? So when you're connecting a plural word with another noun, right? When you're connecting them there, you drop that mim so that the words can connect. And that's what happens here. Le, and then panim, so to the face of, right? Before or in front of. So that's like the literal breakdown of that word. So before, in front of, lifnei. Okay, so it can be used in both of those senses. Like if I was standing in front of the house, ani omed lifnei habayit, before the house, in front of the house. Or if you're before someone in line, ani omed lefanav, I'm standing in front of him. Lifnei would also be used in reference to time, right? So you could say, hu ochel lifnei hayeladim. He eats before the children. Lifnei. Literally to the face of, but means before or in front of. Then we have achare. Achare, which if you remember the word for afternoon from book 1 is achar hatzohoraim. So achar means after. Achare is just another form of that word, so it means after. Achare is just more commonly used than achar. Achar is mostly used in a construct like that, achar hatzohoraim. Achare is the more generic one that you would put anywhere in a sentence. So if you're saying something like after breakfast, acharei aruchat boker. Acharei means after. Acharei. So after the party, using another word from book 1, the party. Acharei hamesiba, after the party. You can also use it with action. So like with a verb, to say after he sang, you would say acharei shehushav. So you use the connector, the sheen, when it's being used with a verb. Okay, so if I'm just saying like after the party, there's no verb there. It's just אחרי המסיבה. But if I say after this happened or after he did this, something like that, then we use the sheen in there as the connector. So you say אחרי שהוא שר, after he sang. אחרי שהוא שר. Or if I said אחרי ששרתי, would be after I sang. אחרי ששרתי. Okay, so when it's used for saying after a noun, if it's just a specific thing, right, then it's just אחרי. But if it's for a verb, after this happened, after someone did this, then it's אחרי ש. The next word here is כבר. So there's a shva underneath the kaf, and then an a vowel under the vet. Kvar. So not really a vowel between the ka and the va sound. So kvar. Kvar means already. Already. Ani kvar yodea. I already know. Ani kvar yodea. Kvar. Israelis will use this sometimes if they're getting impatient. They'll say something like nu kvar, which is like, come on already. Nu kvar. Kvar. So this is another one that's really useful with past tense verbs, right? To say something like כבר אכלתי, I already ate. כבר אכלתי. Okay, and then the last one in the lesson is the word אתמול, which means yesterday. אתמול. אתמול is yesterday. So אתמול בבוקר, that means yesterday morning. אתמול בלילה means last night. Okay, so in English we say, you could say yesterday night or last night, right? But in Hebrew it's just אתמול בלילה. They don't say last night in the sense like we did with the שעבר, right? בשבוע שעבר is last week. But to say last night, they just say yesterday at night. Okay? So you just say אתמול בלילה is yesterday night, last night. Right, so let's just run over those one more time in case somebody missed one. So la'uf is to fly, and this is the way that a bird flies. This is the verb that would be used for a bird or something that doesn't have a motor, basically. So like if you jumped off the edge of the roof and you're like, I flew off the roof, then you would say afti me'agag. Okay. But an airplane or whatever, you would use the verb latus. A helicopter would be latus. Okay. Lamut means to die, and this is the unusual Pa'al Kal, where the vowel is instead of right, in the present tense. This one is af, right, but this is met. Lamut, met. And then lazuz means to move, and zaz is moving. Tzipor is the word for bird. Tzipor. And then avar is the word for past, and it can translate as last, right? Like in these expressions of בשבוע שעבר, the phrase בשבוע שעבר, last week, literally in the week that passed, בשבוע שעבר. Okay, and בשנה שעברה, that's how you say last year, בשנה שעברה. Probably familiar with Shana. Even if you didn't do book one, you're familiar with Shana from the phrase Shana Tova, which is Happy New Year or have a good year. Shana Tova. Okay, then you have the word lifnei, which means before or in front of. Then acharei, which means after. Kvar, which means already. And etmol, which means yesterday. Okay, so that's all the vocabulary for this lesson. Now let's go in a little deeper with the Pa'al Kal verbs in the past tense. Okay, so you're already familiar with this breakdown here. This is each of the present tense forms, right? So lashir is another Pa'al Kal verb which we learned in book one. In the present tense, There's shar, shara, sharim, and sharot. Those are the 4 present tense forms. So every verb in Hebrew has 4 present tense forms. Okay? But then when we start going into the past tense, I believe there are 9. I think there's 9 forms in the past tense. So basically you have 1 for each pronoun. Okay, except for hem and hen, right? The 2 words for they. Those 2 share one form of the verb. Okay? But other than that, each pronoun will have a different verb form in the past tense. The good news is most of them just carry the last sound of the actual pronoun. So like ani has that e ending. So we always add t on the end of a verb in the past tense. If you ever say I did something, so if it's ever a verb that you did past tense, it doesn't matter the binyan, it doesn't matter whatever, it's always going to end with t. Okay? So once you memorize those structures and the suffix that's added, it's really pretty simple to conjugate. It sounds like a lot of forms to try to remember, 9 different forms, but really they match up with your pronoun very easily because the pronoun is actually partly included in the word. Okay, so there's another one broken down in the present tense. And then, so we'll look at the others here. Okay. So, ani, the ending that you're going to add is t. Okay. With Pa'al Kal verbs, the structure of the verb is that name, kal. Okay. So, kal is kuf lamed, and then the vowel is a. So just take that word right there with the a vowel, and that's the basic structure. So you could just plug your root into that format, and it's just going to be those 2 root letters with the a vowel. So whichever verb we're looking at, right, we're going to take that basic form. So examples here. Okay, so lavo, right, the basic form is ba. Lakum, the basic form is kam, right. Lashir, basic form is shal. Latus, tas, lavutz, vat. So if you did book 1 and you remember all the words, you'll recognize each of these. All of these are taught in book 1. And also gab. Okay. So those are a bunch of Pa'al Kal verbs, and then I'll go ahead and put up the ones here from this lesson as well. So zaz, which means move. Right. Af, which means fly. And then met, right, which means die. Okay, so those are your structure, right? Your basic past tense form. So you'll put those first 2 letters, you'll just put them in here, and then add the t on the end. So with any one of those, in the past tense, right, bati would be this one, right, the first one that we wrote up there at the top. Ba, right, came. So bati is how you say I came. And because you've got the suffix from your pronoun included on the end of the word, you don't have to say ani bati, you just say bati, and that means I came. Bati. Bati labait means I came to the house. Bati labait. Okay, then we have kam. So again, you're just going to add t on the end of that. Kamti means I got up. Kamti. I arose. Kamti bisha'a chamesh baboker. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Kamti. Sharti would be I sang. Tasti would be I flew. Ratzti would be I ran. Garti, I lived. Zazti, I moved. Afti, I flew, right, in the different sense, right? Tasti means you flew in an airplane or helicopter, right? Afti just means like you jumped off of something high. And then mati would be I died, which you don't have to say that very often. Kvar mat, or you could use it with like a word like kimat, right? Kimat is almost, so you could say kimat mati, I almost died. Other than that, you don't hardly need that one in the past tense. Okay, so here's a couple example sentences. Kvar sharti etmol, which means already, I sang yesterday. So in English, we do say I already sang yesterday. Sharti, kvar sharti etmol. Another example sentence, zazti lifnei shehu zaz. So that means I moved before he moved. Zazti lifnei shehu zaz. So notice he moved. This is also past tense. So that basic form, zaz, hu zaz. If all I say is hu zaz, you can't know if I'm saying he moved or he's moving. So that form is the same in both the past and present. So you just have to know by context whether it's past or present. So obviously with this sentence, you're already starting it out with past tense, so you know it's past tense here. I moved before he moved. Obviously, it's going to be past tense. Okay, so let's look at the other first person form. Is going to be nu. Nu is the suffix that we add. So with any of those Pa'al Kal verbs, you take that basic form of the verb, right? Just the a vowel, zaz. Zaznu would be we moved. So you're taking the ending of anachnu, right? So you're just taking those last two letters and you tack them on the end of the verb, right? So kamnu would be we got up. Shalnu would be we sang. Banu would be we came. Garnu b'Yisrael, we lived in Israel. So just adding the nun vav, which is the suffix from your pronoun. Okay, and again, you don't need to say anachnu and then zaznu. You can just say zaznu, and that is we moved. The only time that you would use your pronoun and the verb with that suffix like this, so if I said anachnu shalnu, the only time I would say that is if I need to clarify or if I'm like really emphasizing the fact that it's different than what I previously said. Okay, so if I said something like hu shal, aval anachnu lo shalnu. So in that case, right, I'm showing the difference. He sang, but we didn't sing. So then I emphasize it by also saying anachnu lo shalnu. We did not sing. So when you're showing a contrast or emphasizing something, those are the times when you would use your pronoun with the verb that already has that suffix. Okay? But in general, most of the time you don't use them together. It just will sound redundant. So this is a good sentence up here. Shangnu etmol baboker. We sang yesterday in the morning. Or just yesterday morning, you could translate it. Then we'll move on to second person, okay? So these are the forms that would be used when you're talking to somebody, right? You did this. Okay, so we're looking at the form for ata, right? Ata kamta would be you got up, right? So all you have to say is kamta. So it's taking that suffix from the pronoun ata. But notice the hey does not carry over. So it's just the tav with your a vowel. So ata, taking the ending ta and put it on the end. So bata would be you came. Bata. Garta. You could ask, kama zman garta po? How long did you live here? Kama zman garta po? And then the feminine version, so ata and at, right? The feminine also will just end with a tav, but there's no vowel for the ah sound here, right? So when written, they look exactly the same if there's no vowels, right? Zazta and zazt, so just ending on the tav, zazt. So there's no vowel between that last letter of the verb and then the tav, just zazt, or bat, or kamt, shalt. So if you ask a woman, when did you sing? You would say, matai shalt. Matai shalt. Matai kamt would be when did you get up, right? Matai kamt. And if you're speaking to a man, you would add the ah sound on the end, right? So matai kamta. So just like the ending from your pronoun. Okay, and then going into the plural, it's the same concept, right? Atem, aten. So you're adding the tav and mem, right? So batem would be you came, a common phrase that people say in Israel. It's equivalent to thank you for coming. They say thank you that you came. So they say toda shebatem. That means thanks for coming. Toda shebatem. Thanks that you came. Toda shebatem. Thanks for coming. Shartem would be you all sang. Shartem. Right? And then with aten, sharten, right? So that would just be the feminine plural. Sharten. So up here we have a sentence, Shartem yafe. That just means you sang beautifully, right? Yafe. Shartem yafe. And then a question down here, Lama lo kamten. So this is if you're speaking to a group of ladies, right? Lama lo kamten. Why didn't you get up? Okay, so again, you're adding that suffix, so you don't need to use the pronoun with it. Kamtem is you all got up. But you would use the pronoun with it only when you need to show the emphasis or contrast. Okay, and then with third person ones, okay, so third person is a little different because there's not a suffix added, okay? Third person just follows a set format where the masculine singular in the third person, so who, which in English is he, right, just uses zaz, right? So it's just the basic form of the verb is the masculine third person singular, okay? That basic form just carries over. So like I said earlier, right, huzaz could be he moved or he's moving, and you can't know unless you have context. And also with the feminine, it's the same thing. Third person, he, comma, could be she is getting up or she got up, okay? So both of these with who and he, with those two pronouns, past and present tense, you can't know without context. They're the same in both. And because there isn't a suffix that's added that is just like your pronoun, right, you still use the pronoun with this form, okay? So in the third person, you're still using your pronoun with the past tense form of the verb. But in first and second person forms, you don't because that suffix is added. So basically the pronoun is part of the word. But it's not that way in the third person. Okay, so who and he just carry over those basic forms from the present tense. But then with them, so this is the one that shares one form. So hem and hen both share the same form of the verb for past tense. And you just add a vav, which is pronounced u, okay? So zazu, hem zazu would be they moved. Hem ba'u would be they came. Hen sharu would be they sang. Hem ratzu, they ran. Hem ratzu, they ran. Hem afu would be they flew. Hem metu would be they died. So that is all of the forms for past tense. And if you have the book, lesson 3, or page 3, lesson 1, page 3 shows you the breakdown with all of the different forms and which ones change and which ones are the same in the present. So obviously the book is really helpful to have for reference and everything. But hopefully I covered it well enough here on the screen that you don't absolutely have to have it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have any questions, the best way to do it is just put it in the chat. I think because of recording the lesson, the way I have it set up, I don't think we can do audio very well. So the best way to ask questions would be to just type them in the chat, and then I can answer your questions. If you don't have any questions and it's all super clear to you and you don't want to hear anybody else's questions, you're free to go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you next week. And if you need the recording of the video or of this lesson, just let me know and I'll get it to you. Hopefully I'll have that done by Sunday or Sunday at the latest, hopefully. So if you need the recording of the lesson, just let me know. All right, are there any questions? Okay, so sentence structure. So with your past tense form of the verb, right? And this is only second person, so if I'm talking to a man, right, and I say, you did something, okay, whatever the verb is, then yes, it's always going to end with ta, to be exact, right? It's always going to end with ta. And the feminine would just end with the T sound on the end of the word, right? So bata would be you came if I'm speaking to a man, and bat would be you came if I'm speaking to a woman. Bat, bata. Zazt, zazta. Right? Because ata, so you go zazta. And at, zazt. It's the same as the pronoun. Ata is you to a man, at is you to a woman. So that ending just matches with the pronoun. All right, any other questions? All right, well, if a question comes up later on and you didn't get a chance to ask it in class, just shoot me an email. Love getting questions. Always happy to answer the questions. Okay, somebody's got a question. Go ahead.
Hi, I cannot figure out how to ask a question on here with my keyboard because it's
Okay.
an iPad.
All right.
I know someone from Sukkot that is interested in this class. Should I share a link for her to join it? Is there anything I could do to help her?
If you know that she wants to join, then you could just send me her email or tell her to email
Okay.
me one way or the other. That way I can just add her to the list and then she'll get all the emails.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome. All right then. להתראות כולם. See y'all later.